On my 5th birthday, my biological parents collected 500 yuan and wanted to give me to a couple who had a stupid son. Fortunately, my uncle arrived overnight and protected me behind him. My 2 children are boys, so the 3rd sister will be my daughter. At that time, I didn't have a full name. Like the 3rd daughter of other families in the village, I was called the 3rd sister. Later, my aunt told me countless times, if it weren't for your uncle, you would have married that family's stupid son. You must be filial to your uncle when you grow up, understand? My uncle asked the old people in the village to name me, Song Luzhu. He hoped that I could become a shining pearl, but in fact I was just an ordinary pebble. My uncle was very good, but he was very busy. He had to drive a rice threshing tractor to various villages to husk grains every day. He left at 5 or 6 in the morning, and sometimes came home at 8 or 9 in the middle of the night. My aunt was very fierce and always had a stern face. My eldest brother was 13 at that time, and was in the rebellious period. He basically ignored me. My second brother is 2 years older than me. He pulled my hair, tugged at my clothes, and put a dead mouse in my quilt. I looked forward to the rain every day, so that my uncle would not have to work. With him around, I felt that it was home. Not long after, my uncle sent me to preschool. My aunt's face was very long. It's okay for you to bring her back to feed her, but you also have to spend money to send her to school. You have too much money to spend, right? My uncle smiled and said, the village chief said that all children must go to school, otherwise it's illegal. My aunt still cursed. I wrung my hands and said nothing, wishing I was deaf. My uncle said humbly, okay, don't say these things in front of Luzhu. My aunt gave me a fierce look and went into the kitchen. Soon there was a bang 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 sound from inside. My uncle pulled me over and said softly, your aunt has a bad temper, but she's not a bad person. Luzhu, you should be more sensible in the future and help her with more work. She will like you. After school, my second brother played marbles and cardboard with a group of friends. I ran home to cut grass for the pigs. You may not know that water celery, which is now sold for more than 10 yuan a pound, was everywhere on the edge of the field at that time. The pigs were tired of eating it. After cutting grass for the pigs, I had to help cook and pick vegetables, and wait for my aunt to come back and fry them and eat. On weekends, I had to wash clothes for the whole family. The bucket for clothes was half a person taller than me. At that time, there was endless work to do in the fields. Planting sweet potatoes, turning sweet potato vines, planting peanuts, harvesting peanuts, transplanting rice, pulling weeds, and spraying pesticides. My uncle was outside all day, so most of these tasks fell on my aunt. She was exhausted after work. My eldest brother was rebellious and talked back, and my second brother climbed up the roof and removed the tiles. Now that I think about it, her bad temper is understandable. Children are sleepy, and often I fell asleep when my uncle came back. When I woke up in the morning, I would touch under my pillow. Lollipops, wawawadin, sour plum powder, these are the only favors my uncle gave me. One day, I touched it, but it was empty. Just when I was disappointed, my aunt pushed the door in. Her face was gloomy. She raised the lollipop in her hand and asked, where did you get the money to buy the lollipop? Did you steal it? I pursed my lips and said nothing, and she was furious. When you are young, you steal needles. When you grow up, you steal gold. I have to beat you hard to teach you a lesson. She picked up the bamboo broom in the corner and hit me. At this time, my eldest brother had finished breakfast and was going to school. He stood at the door, his voice changing period full of impatience. Are you dumb? That was given to you by Dad, why didn't you say it? That night, I heard my aunt crying softly. I have been with you for so many years, and I never saw you buy me some candy or fruit. You are so nice to her now. My uncle explained gently, the money I earn is not all in your hands. If you want to buy it, I will never say you. How can it be the same? Okay, keep your voice down, don't let the children laugh at you. The voices next door gradually became quieter, and my uncle gently opened my door. I choked and said, Uncle, don't buy me snacks in the future. He helped me close the mosquito net. Adults quarreling has nothing to do with you, you go to sleep. Later, the snacks my uncle brought were double. One for me and one for my aunt. The second brother cried out, I want one too. My uncle slapped me. How can you, a boy, eat snacks? My aunt said sarcastically, I am blessed by my niece, otherwise I would not have this treatment. But she changed her face among the women with a lollipop in her mouth. She smiled happily and said, my Xinqing still treats me as a younger sister and buys me candies every day. Do you think he is wasting money? More than a year later, my biological mother finally got what she wanted and gave birth to a boy. My uncle and aunt took me to the full moon banquet. The things in my biological mother's house were almost emptied by the family planning office, and the chairs were borrowed from the neighbors. But she was full of joy. Finally, a son was born. Let's see who dares to gossip about me behind my back. My cousin has been named Zhang Wei. He is yellow and black, with a lot of hair on his face, just like a monkey. I don't understand why he is still praised for being cute. I almost instinctively called out Mom, and my biological mother's smile immediately froze on her face. Don't call me that, your uncle and aunt are your parents now, don't you understand? My aunt smiled, she didn't crawl out of my belly, so don't call me Mom. So, who are my parents? Finally, my uncle patted me on the back and said, go play with your sisters. The guests were treated to sweet wine and eggs, and they all had 2 eggs in their bowls. In my bowl, there was only watery sugar water. As she had done countless times since I was a child, my biological mother said, "There are not enough eggs at home, and it is not good for children to eat too many eggs. The fire on the kitchen stove is about to go out, go and help light it." I felt something was wrong at the time, but I couldn't put it into words. I was so young that I didn't know how to resist the authority of my parents. Later, my aunt came to the kitchen and picked me up from the fire. She grabbed my ear and said, "I bought you new clothes, and you ran here to play with fire. You are not honest when you come to visit." She had a loud voice, and my biological mother was quickly attracted. She looked embarrassed and said, "I asked my third sister to light the fire." My aunt let me go, her face was light. "Oh, well, she is your daughter, and she will stay for you to keep the firewood in the future." My biological mother's face changed slightly, and she quickly said, "I just asked her to help. I have already given her to you, so why should I take her back?" The two of them went back and forth, pushing me away like an object. Finally, my biological father came. He pulled a long face. "If my sister-in-law doesn't want her, I will still send her to Zhang Mozi's house. I can still get 500 yuan, just enough to buy milk powder for Xiaowei." On the way back, my aunt kept talking about me. After all, she is her biological daughter. She is willing to work for them even if she doesn't give her eggs. What's the use of you being good? They still throw you away like garbage. 3 daughters, but they don't want you, tut tut. I sat on the front bar of the bicycle, and the hot summer wind rushed into my eyes. It made my eyes sore and bitter. From that day on, I had uncles and aunts and uncles. But I only lost my parents. My aunt was usually okay, but she would be particularly irritable when school started. At that time, compulsory education was already universal, but education still required payment. For rural parents, it was a huge pressure to send 3 children to school. My uncle always had to spend some time to persuade her to let me continue to study. Every summer vacation, my biological parents would invite me to stay with them for a while. I wanted to refuse, but my uncle would say, "They are your parents after all, and they want you back because they miss you." There was only one 3-leaf ceiling fan in my biological parents' house, and it was hot in the summer. The whole family would spread mats on a cement floor to sleep. I slept in the outermost corner, and could hardly feel the wind, but could only smell the sweaty smell in the room. They didn't miss me. It was the summer harvest and there was a lot of work at home, so they asked me to go back to help. But they had to save face for others. "Third sister is a guest, you can't let her work in the fields." Indeed, I didn't have to go to the fields to harvest rice. I had to wash clothes, cook, feed pigs, and dry millet at home. After the harvest, they hurriedly sent me back. "You can't stay too long, otherwise your parents will be disappointed." Every time I went back, my aunt would take care of me for at least half a month. The days passed quickly, and during the summer vacation of the 4th grade of elementary school, my eldest brother graduated from junior college and went to work in the factory. The rice in the field was already golden, and its heavy head was drooping. My biological mother came on a bicycle early in the morning. "My third sister is on summer vacation. I'll take her to my place to play for a few days." My aunt kept a straight face and didn't say anything. My uncle smiled and said, "Then Luju, go pack some clothes." My biological mother smiled and said, "It's okay if you don't pack. Her 2 sisters have clothes." While my uncle and aunt were away, my biological mother took my hand and whispered, "If you stay with your uncle, you won't have to go to the fields. Come back with me. It's so nice not to have to bask in the sun." My aunt came out of the kitchen with herbal tea and saw the scene. I shook off my biological mother's hand and said loudly, "I don't want to go. My eldest brother has gone to work. There are not enough people at home. I want to stay and help this year." "You, child, how can you not know what's good for you?" My biological mother said, reaching out and grabbing me tightly. "How could I hurt you?" My aunt stepped forward quickly and pulled me over. "If Luju doesn't want to go, don't force it. I'll go to your place to play during the winter vacation." This summer vacation, I accompanied my aunt to harvest rice. The villagers joked, "Oh, this is the first time I see Luju working in the fields." My aunt said loudly, "I've raised her for a few years, so she should help me with some work." Since then, I have not returned to my biological parents' home during the summer vacation. Even though my aunt didn't smile at me, she would buy me a new set of clothes every Chinese New Year. Unlike my biological parents, I always wore the clothes left by my 2 sisters during those 5 years. My panties had several holes in them, but they didn't buy me new ones. I can still tell who is good and who is bad. The year I graduated from elementary school, my second brother was admitted to number 1 middle school. My eldest brother sent back 2,000 yuan, saying that it was for my second brother's tuition. He worked hard in the factory and his salary was not high, so 2,000 yuan was not a small amount of money. That year he turned 20, and my aunt began to worry about finding him a wife. My eldest brother always said he was not in a hurry. In the dead of night, my aunt cried to my uncle, "There is nothing at home, and there are 2 students. How can a girl like him? He won't be a bachelor for life, right?" My uncle comforted her, "You are still young. Didn't I marry you at the age of 23? What do you mean young?" His classmates now have 2 children. My second brother was a boarding student in high school. When he grew up, his temperament became more stable. At that time, non-mainstream was popular. Every time after school, there was always a group of men and women with dyed yellow hair, earrings all over their ears, and dark circles under their eyes at the school gate. I usually walked around them, but on the last day before the National Day, I was late for cleaning, and the girl in the lead stopped me. She chewed gum, pulled my hair, and asked, "Do you have money?" I shook my head vigorously. "Then cut your braids, and you can get some money." She dragged me to the barber shop next door, and at this moment, a loud voice rang out, "What are you doing?" My second brother rode a bicycle, coming at lightning speed, and stopped in front of me with a foot brake. A layer of dust was raised on the muddy ground. He was very fierce. "Why don't you let my sister go?" On the way back, he kept scolding me. "You resist, you shout, kick and hit, don't let them bully you." Halfway through the scolding, he sighed again, "Forget it, don't resist, the braids can grow again, people are more important." The next day he took me to find his junior high school classmate. A fat, tattooed yellow-haired guy. He often hangs out in front of our school. From that day on, no one stopped me even if I passed in front of them. When I was in the third year of junior high school, the women began to talk about me. "Luju is about to graduate from junior high school. It's not easy for your uncle and aunt to raise you these years. You have to be filial to them when the time comes, don't you know?" They would also say to my aunt, "Luju is beautiful and well-behaved. She will be able to go out to make money next year, and then you will have the money for the bride price for your eldest son, right?" My aunt said loudly, "I have never treated her badly in these years, and it is right for her to be filial to us." When I was in elementary school, my uncle's rice milling business was very good. But now many villages have electric rice mills, and villagers use tricycles to pull rice to mill rice. They can mill rice whenever they want, which is cheap and convenient. My uncle's rice mill is old, and it breaks down every few days, and the business is getting worse year by year. My second brother is in the third year of high school, with good grades, and he is expected to enter a good university. My uncle is very happy, but he is also worried about his tuition and living expenses. I think I will be like my two sisters from my biological mother's family, and go to the factory after graduating from junior high school. Then after 1 or 2 years, I will find a man who pays a high gift, marry and have children. Because of this idea, my grades in the midterm exams have dropped. My uncle got the report card and slammed the table hard. "That's how you study. You fell back by more than 20 places. You can't even get the qualification to enter number 1 middle school. At that time, you couldn't just take the entrance exam for number 1 middle school in the countryside. A certain number of places would be allocated based on the number of admissions in previous years. Our school usually had about 30 places. Anyway, you have to go to work after graduating from junior high school." My uncle widened his eyes. "Don't listen to what those women say. As long as you can get into number 1 middle school, I will sell everything I have to send you there." I glanced at my aunt. She said sarcastically, "Look at what I'm doing. Your uncle is the head of our family." This was tacit consent. My eyes turned red and I choked up and said, "I will study hard." After that day, I studied almost like a rock. My grades also improved rapidly. My aunt didn't let me do much housework. She was very angry. "If your uncle knew that I ordered you to work, he would scold me again. I am not raising a niece, I am raising a princess." My second brother finished the college entrance examination and got a good score. He got into a 985 university in the province. My aunt was so proud that her face was almost broken by laughter. I also successfully obtained the qualification for the examination. To take the examination for number 1 middle school, we had to go to the county town, and the teacher led the team to stay in a hotel. Food and accommodation are all expensive. The hotel we booked has not been occupied for a long time, and the quilt is moldy. There were mice crawling on the ceiling at night, rustling all night, and I hardly slept. After the examination, I returned to the village. My face was pale. My aunt sighed. "It seems that there is no hope." Several classmates invited me to work in Guangdong together, and an enthusiastic aunt introduced me to a partner. My uncle said to wait and see after the results came out. My 16th birthday soon arrived, and my mother came to the house on this day. She also bought a small cake in the town. I thought she felt guilty and was trying to make it up to me. Unexpectedly, after a good meal and a good drink, she said, "My third sister graduated from junior high school and is now 16. I found her a good match." The man was 25 and had a car accident before, so he limped a little, but he could offer a betrothal gift of 150,000. In 2007, 150,000 in a small village was a lot of money. My biological mother was very happy. "We will split the money in half. Wouldn't that cover Liu Guang's college tuition and living expenses? Anyway, my third sister can't get into high school, and I don't know how many years it will take her to earn this money if she works." She said this in front of me. Just like many years ago, she treated me as a rare commodity. I was so angry that my face turned red. My biological mother was still beaming with joy. "Third sister, although that man is a little lame, he is very well off. He received hundreds of thousands of yuan in compensation for the car accident. You will have a good life if you marry him. I gave birth to you, so I still have to plan for you." I gritted my teeth. "I will pass the exam." My biological mother sneered. "Forget it. You were so stupid when you were a child. You couldn't even count from 1 to 20. It would be a miracle if you could pass the exam to number 1 middle school. You crawled out of my belly. How much do I weigh?" I was indeed stupid. I actually thought that she would feel guilty about sending me away. With tears rolling down my cheeks, I shouted loudly, "If I can't pass the exam to number 1 middle school, I will go to work, I won't marry. You didn't want me when you were 5 years old, I would rather earn money for my aunt than for you." Just as the emotions were bursting out, the landline at home rang. It was the head teacher calling. Song Luju, the results of the high school entrance examination are out. He paused. My heart was hanging high. Then I heard him say, you passed the exam. There are 10 people in our school who passed the exam, and you are the second. Sweat poured down my forehead. I reached out to wipe it and found that I was crying. My uncle grabbed the phone and asked again. After learning the results, he nodded repeatedly. Great, great. Thank you, teacher, for your cultivation. Thank you. My aunt came over at some point, listened to the back of the microphone, and stared at me. You came back with a pale face. I thought there was no hope. My biological mother murmured in a daze, you can't even count from 1 to 20, and you got into number 1 middle school? Her eyes rolled. How can you afford to support a high school student and a college student? I think you should just let her marry a good family. My second brother has been sleeping next door. He has never liked my biological mother. At this time, he suddenly opened the door. She is my sister now. Whether she gets married or studies, what does it have to do with you, Aunt? I can get a loan for my tuition and earn my own living expenses, so she doesn't have to sacrifice. Do you know how difficult it is to get into number 1 middle school? I don't know how much hardship Luju went through to get in. You say you don't want to study, so you don't want to study? Uncle pretended to scold. Liu Guang, how can you talk to your aunt like this? It's rude. That was how relatives were at that time. There were constant quarrels, but they rarely tore each other apart in public. My biological mother's face was red and white. I took a deep breath and said slowly, Aunt, even if I want to get married and receive a dowry, the money is for my uncle and aunt. You have already sent me away. You can't sell me again, right? My biological mother was angry and left. She scolded me all the way as an ungrateful person. She also said that my uncle and aunt must have burned their brains to spend money to send their daughter to study. My aunt killed an old hen that laid eggs at night and gave me a big chicken leg. Eat, and remember to give me the betrothal money in the future. The women in the village also advised my uncle and aunt, it costs so much money for your son to go to college, and you have to take the trouble to raise a girl from another family. Don't let it go in vain. You may not even send your own sister to school, but you care so much about your niece. The admission letter was accompanied by a list of fees. Tuition, accommodation, and miscellaneous fees totaling 1,800 yuan must be paid at the beginning of the school year. My aunt's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Where can I get this money for you? When you work in the future, you have to hand over all your salary, don't you know? My second brother's tuition can be loaned, but living expenses still need to be prepared. When you are poor, even a penny can kill a hero. My uncle raised money everywhere, and someone said, ask your eldest brother for some money. My uncle laughed dryly. It is the responsibility of parents to send their children to school, not his responsibility as a brother. We don't have money to support him to get married and build a house, which is already unfair to him. My second brother went to the county to tutor people and worked in an internet cafe. I slept on the sofa in the internet cafe at night to save rent. I also wanted to help. On that day, a hair collector came to the village. My hair is thick and dense. I have been growing it for 5 years. It is almost as long as my waist. After bargaining, I sold it for 80 yuan. I ran home with the money, sweating profusely. My aunt just came back from the field. I handed her the money. Aunt, I sold my hair for 80 yuan. Aunt wiped her hands and stroked the back of my head a few times. Who the hell cut your hair so short? It's okay, Aunt. It will grow again, and you always say that my hair is too long and falls all over the house. I'll take you to the barber shop to trim it. It's too ugly. No need, Aunt, just give me a pair of scissors and cut it casually. Don't waste 5 yuan. That evening, the sky was full of red clouds. Aunt borrowed new scissors to trim my hair. She scolded me while trimming. First she scolded the hairdresser for being a worthless person, then she scolded me for being an idiot for letting others cut my hair randomly. As she scolded, her voice became lower. You should keep your hair long in the future. Thin girls look better with long hair. Your money is not needed at home. My second brother came back and saw that my braid was gone. He was furious. You should just cut your hair into a crew cut. You can't tell a man from a woman with this hairstyle from the back. When my biological mother found out, she also scolded me for being stupid. Your hair is so long and so many, you can sell it for at least 150 yuan. During the 3 years of high school, my hair never grew long. Because short hair is easier to take care of, and you don't have to waste time and energy. Later, my eldest brother transferred 1,000 yuan back to solve the family's urgent needs. It was only when I entered high school that I realized that people are different. Many of my classmates went to cram schools during the summer vacation and learned high school content in advance. They easily kept up with the teacher's progress, but I was like an old ox, struggling to move forward. The teacher was more concerned about the top students, and didn't care whether we, the poor students, understood. After a month, my self-confidence almost collapsed. At 11 o'clock, my second brother came back. I took the opportunity to ask him questions, and my mood became depressed as I asked him questions. I can't finish learning at all. My second brother put down the pen in his hand. Luju, when I first went to high school, I was just like you. I felt stupid and had a big gap. I wanted to learn everything well and prove myself. Later I realized that learning should also focus on and give up. He told me that in the second year of high school, there will be a division into arts and science classes. Students who study science will basically not be exposed to arts subjects, as long as they pass the unified examination. So I can definitely make a choice now, get ahead of others and lay a solid foundation in advance. Science majors are relatively easy to find jobs, while liberal arts majors require more memory and are more suitable for girls. You can choose. That night, the sky was full of stars. My second brother talked about the past lightly, but when he climbed over these mountains alone, it must have been extremely difficult. Now he has a bright light and immediately turned back to guide me, hoping that I can avoid detours. I decided. Forgive him for putting a dead mouse in my bed when I was a child. I want to find a good job and make more money. So I chose science and gave up history, politics and geography. Because there are fewer subjects, my energy is more focused, the pressure of learning is much less, and I can clearly feel my progress. But in the midterm exam ranking, I ranked more than 40 in the class. Because the liberal arts were too poor, the total score was lowered. When my biological mother learned about my grades, she said, "I said it long ago, she is not a good student. I'm afraid she can only get into a third-tier university with this score." The villagers also said, "Song Dami's family must have more money than they can spend. Lukai hasn't married yet, but they are not in a hurry, why not?" My aunt is almost dying of anxiety. After much thought, she felt that her family was too poor. After the winter break of her first year in high school, her uncle also worked for the contractor. It was very hard to work under the sun and rain with almost no rest, but he could earn about 3,000 yuan a month, which was much more than making rice. My aunt cooked for people on the construction site. In addition to her salary, she could also pick up some scrap iron wire and the like, which brought her nearly 2,000 yuan in income. My aunt raised my living expenses to 300 yuan, your second brother only gave me 250 yuan at that time. When you get a job, you have to pay me 5 times the money, understand? Got it, got it. After so many years of getting along, I gradually understood her temper. She has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. During the winter vacation of my second year in high school, my eldest brother finally brought a girlfriend back. My aunt was so happy that she arranged the marriage, but the girl asked for a betrothal gift of 100,000 yuan and a house in the county town. This was far beyond the ability of my uncle and aunt. My uncle sat under the eaves and smoked a whole pack of cigarettes. Snow was flying all over the sky. It was so light, but it fell on his shoulders like 1,000 pounds, bending his spine. The biological mother had something to say again. "If you had listened to me and not sent Luzhu to school, but let her get married, you would have found a daughter-in-law now." She also gave the eldest brother some advice: "Get her pregnant first, and if you have a child, she will marry you even if you don't ask for a penny." At that time, many men in the village got married this way. My good-tempered uncle got angry for the first time. "Shut up, and don't get involved in my family's affairs in the future." My biological mother left with a curse: "I'm doing this for your own good, you don't know how to appreciate kindness." The marriage didn't work out in the end. My eldest brother was very depressed and quit his job directly. My aunt was very sad, and her hair turned a lot white. "He's almost 26 years old, is he going to be a bachelor for the rest of his life?" After my eldest brother quit his job, he connected an internet cable and bought a second-hand computer. The spit of the village almost buried my family. One said that my uncle and aunt were blinded by greed, and raised me, a useless niece, but ended up sacrificing their son. The other said that my eldest brother was completely useless, didn't make money, and stayed at home playing computer every day. My aunt asked people everywhere to arrange a blind date for my eldest brother. But when people from all over the country heard about the situation at home, they all refused. My aunt was worried that my eldest brother would be depressed, so he stopped working on the construction site. My eldest brother couldn't wake up during the day, and he would type away on the keyboard at night. My aunt couldn't help it and advised him: "You will have another girl. You have to cheer up and don't play on the computer all day." "I'm not playing on the computer. I'm writing novels to make money." My eldest brother said that he would never have a future in the assembly line, and he wanted to do something with a promising future. My aunt didn't believe it. I wanted to see what novel my eldest brother wrote. My eldest brother refused. "This is not for your little sister to read." I was also skeptical. It was not until a long time later that I learned that the internet supervision was not as strict as it is now, and my eldest brother wrote a marginal novel. The sound of firecrackers bid farewell to the old year, and another year has passed in a blink of an eye. I still have half a year before the college entrance examination. After the class division in the second year of high school, I entered the key science class. After dropping the lame subjects, my ranking rose sharply. When the arts and sciences were divided, I ranked 98th in the grade. In the first term final exam of the second year of high school, I ranked 76th. At the end of the second year of high school, I ranked 62nd. In the first term final exam of the third year of high school, I ranked 55th in the grade. The higher you go, the harder it is. I had to grit my teeth to stay steady and not retreat, and to take another step forward, I felt like I had to break through countless rubber bands. I often felt that I could never improve. At the New Year's Eve dinner, my second brother comforted me: "Keep calm, as long as you keep this score, you can get a 985 at the bottom. This is already excellent. Sometimes what crushes us is not the weight outside, but the heavy straw in your heart." That night, my older brother, who played on the computer every day, insisted on giving me 500 yuan as New Year's money. "Luzhu, use it to buy candy." In fact, I have long stopped liking candy. My older brother and I are 8 years apart in age, and we didn't spend much time together since we were young. Perhaps, in his memory, I am always the little girl who secretly hid and ate snacks bought by my uncle. My aunt told people everywhere that my older brother could make money by writing novels on the computer. But no one believed it. I've never heard of making money by playing on the computer. Yes, at least he is a technical secondary school student. My son graduated from junior high school and can now earn more than 2,000 yuan a month. Lukai seems to be useless. I'm afraid he will become an old bachelor who no one wants in the future. On the second day of the Chinese New Year, my biological mother returned to her parents' home as usual. She secretly pulled me aside and stuffed 100 yuan into my pocket. This is your New Year's money. Keep it well and don't let your uncle and aunt know. Use it to buy some beautiful clothes and some delicious food. I threw it back to her. I don't want it. Besides, 100 yuan can't buy so many things you said. My biological mother looked embarrassed. Later, I overheard my biological father asking her, why did you give the New Year's money to that money loser? My biological mother said, what do you know? If she gets into a good university, build a good relationship now, and she will help Xiaowei when she makes money in the future. Is this human language? I started school on the 6th day of the first lunar month, and my studies became more intense. Now when I think back on those more than 100 days, it seems like a blink of an eye, but when I was in it, time seemed extremely long. Those test papers that I could never finish gave me an illusion that the college entrance examination would never come. But it still came. It was only June, but the weather was unusually hot. Cicadas kept chirping on the treetops outside the examination room. I remembered that when I was 4 years old, my eldest sister took me to pick up cicada shells. This thing can be used as medicine and can be exchanged for money. We got separated while picking. The night invaded, and the forest was dim. I cried and groped my way home. I don't know how many times I fell before I finally walked out of the dense forest. I stumbled into the village and saw my home from a distance. The lights in the main room were on, and my biological parents and 2 sisters were eating. Each person occupied one side of the table, full and harmonious. It seemed that I didn't exist. God took a nap and arranged the wrong position and wrong family for me. Fortunately, after the nap, it corrected the mistake. It put me back to my uncle's house. My uncle, aunt and 2 brothers are my destined family. For them, I must get good grades. During the exam days, I felt like a pool of water. It was pouring out. When the 4 exams were over, all the water was drained. My body was empty, and even my soul seemed to be floating in the air. It was extremely empty. I walked out of the examination room in a daze. I heard a familiar call, Luzhu. I looked up and saw my aunt among the hundreds of waiting parents. The sun was setting and fell on her gray hair. Her forehead was full of sweat, and she raised her arm to wave at me. My wandering soul landed on a solid place. It turned out that there was an invisible line holding me. Even if we are at the ends of the earth, we are still concerned. My aunt took me back to the village on a motorcycle. She kept on nagging, your uncle and I have endured so much gossip and hardship to support your studies. If you are not filial in the future, you will be struck by lightning, don't you know? The sunset was setting, and the light was brilliant. I hugged my aunt's waist, slowly put my face against her back, and whispered, I know. Aunt stopped talking. Only the summer wind brought the smell of detergent on her clothes. On the day when the results were released, my uncle asked for leave to go back to the village, and my aunt got up early. From more than 5 in the morning to 12 noon, she didn't stop for a minute. She kept on nagging, repeating the same words over and over again for more than 10 times. Finally, it was time, and my eldest brother opened the website to check the scores. After entering the certificate information, the room could hear a pin drop in the 10 seconds of jumping. Chinese 125, Mathematics 123, English 139, Science 251. The total score was 638. That year, the first-tier line for science was 567. It was about the same as my usual grades, which was considered a stable performance. At that moment, my aunt's eyes were red. There are a bunch of ignorant women in the village. I want to see whose daughter can be as promising as my niece. That afternoon, she ran around the village wearing a straw hat, and sighed to everyone she saw. Luzhu scored 638 points, and I have to support her to go to college. I'm so annoyed. Based on the suggestions of my class teacher and my second brother, I filled in the 985 university next to my second brother. My aunt insisted on holding a graduation banquet for me. She said happily, these people hold banquets for trivial matters, but why don't we hold such a big wedding in our family? When the time comes, you must tell everyone that you will be filial to me and your uncle in the future, and piss off those gossiping women to death. 12 tables were set for the banquet. The aunts and aunties in the village changed their faces, and the sound of envy was endless. You did the right thing in raising your niece. You and your wife raised 2 college students. It's amazing. Luzhu is very smart. I told you that she would pass the exam. When they graduate, you and your wife will have a much better life in the future. Your uncle and aunt are your second parents. You must be filial to them in the future. The atmosphere was very lively. My biological mother, who had drunk a few glasses of beer, held my hand. Her eyes were red and her face was full of pity. Third sister, I am so happy that you can pass the college. You are just as smart as me. I knew you could pass the exam. She stroked my hand. In order to give birth to a younger brother, I had to send you to my uncle's house. In fact, I have always missed you. I wanted to bring you home for a long time, but I was afraid that it would affect your studies. You are my mother's child, and our family should still be together. Today, thank your uncle and aunt for taking care of you for so many years, and don't bother them in the future. Come home with me. She pulled over her cousin who was eating and drinking lavishly. Xiaowei, call your sister to go home with you. Zhang Wei glanced at me. It's not like he got into Tsinghua or Peking University, it's nothing special. The eldest sister came over with her 2 daughters, pregnant. Third sister, they are your biological parents, you can't bear grudges as a child, we will be reunited as a family in the future. My head was buzzing with anger. I knew they had a low standard, but I didn't expect them to be so shameless. What's even funnier is that someone else echoed, raising is a favor, giving birth is also a favor. You are a college student, you will have a bright future, you should respect both parents. The biological mother smiled but didn't really smile. Of course you should remember your uncle and aunt, but if I hadn't given birth to you, you wouldn't be where you are today. Most importantly, you should remember me and your father. She reached out and pulled me, we are a real family. I pushed her away. Aunt, uncle. I remember when you sent me away, you said you would no longer be my parents. Over the years, you never asked about my studies. You never paid a penny for my tuition, and you never bought me a pair of socks or a piece of clothing. When I graduated from junior high school, you even wanted to sell me for the bride price. For more than 10 years, it was my uncle and aunt who raised and educated me. I choked up as I spoke. I was in high school for 3 years, and my aunt never bought me a new set of clothes. Now that I've been admitted to university and have a promising future, you come to recognize me? What are you planning? Do you think I don't know? I raised my voice and said, you think you can be nice to me now, and when I graduate and make money, you will suck my blood and let me raise your son for you, right? You are dreaming. I won't give you a penny. My biological father was so angry that he raised his hand to hit me. You little bastard, I'm your biological father, who taught you to talk to me like that? My uncle, aunt and second brother stepped forward and stopped him. The taciturn eldest brother pulled me behind him. My biological mother smiled and said, Xiaowei is your biological brother, you should help him. Mom had no choice back then, and now I apologize to you, okay? As she said that, she actually knelt down. If she kneeled down today, my reputation would be completely ruined, and the villagers would definitely use moral blackmail to make me recognize my ancestors. I will never be able to get rid of this disgusting family in the future. I was so angry that my eyes were red, and I wanted to chop this evil woman off with a knife. Just then, my aunt rushed up, grabbed my mother's hair, and rolled into a ball with her. Song Chunhua, don't give me that. I have been holding back for Liuju's sake. But you are so shameless. You treat me and your brother as a fool. We have worked so hard to raise your daughter for you, and now you want to move back home when it's time to pick fruits. Dream on your dreams. Liuju's future betrothal money must be given to me, and the salary she earns is also mine. I have raised her for more than 10 years, and this is what I deserve. You can take her back, but you can give me 100,000 yuan in one go, and I will return your daughter to you. The onlookers reacted at this time and stepped forward to pull the two apart. My aunt sat on the ground and cried loudly, why is my life so hard? I have been working so hard to marry into the Song family for so many years. The old lady bullied me before, and now the sister-in-law is plotting against me. She cried about her efforts for me over the years. When I was 7 years old, I had a high fever and fainted. In the middle of winter, she ran barefoot with me in her arms for 5 miles to find the village doctor. When I was 10 years old, it rained heavily. She went to school to pick me up. When she came back, the water level rose. She was almost washed away by the flood while carrying me. There is still a scar on her leg from the scratch on the branch. During the years of junior high school, she almost managed more than 10 acres of land by herself, just to make more money to subsidize my tuition. When I was in high school, she was on the construction site at noon, the sun was scorching, and she wore a straw hat to pick up nails and sell scraps. I raised my sister with all my heart and soul, and you just take her away. What's wrong with this life? I'd rather die. Everyone was shocked. My face turned pale. Everyone comforted my aunt and accused my biological mother, you are a heartless woman. You will feel better if you force your sister-in-law to death, right? You haven't raised Liuju or worried about her for more than 10 years. Why do you want to go back? The biological mother was still unwilling to give up, she is my own daughter. I still can't bear to let her go. Bullshit. It was my uncle, his face red with anger. Are you reluctant to part with her or the money she will make in the future? You know it yourself. If you keep calculating like this will no longer be your mother's home in the future. My biological mother's face froze, and she looked at my uncle in disbelief. My uncle has a good temper and is several years older than my biological mother. He has always been very tolerant of her. My biological mother licked her lips and placed her last glimmer of hope on me. Third sister, I was wrong in the past. I now recognize you back and also want to reduce the burden on your uncle. Your father and I will be responsible for your college living expenses. Your eldest brother doesn't make money playing computer games, and your second brother has to take the postgraduate entrance examination. Your uncle and aunt have a heavy burden. I sneered, what about tuition? My biological mother said embarrassedly, can't I get a loan for tuition? You see, she has calculated everything clearly. A few hundred yuan of living expenses a month can be exchanged for a college daughter to work like a cow and a horse for the rest of her life. How worth it? The eldest brother frowned. Who said I don't make money? Wait a minute. As he said that, he took out a school bag from the bedroom, took out 5 neatly arranged 100 yuan bills from it, and threw them on the group table covered with a red disposable plastic tablecloth. He said coolly, Liu Guang, you can rest assured to take the postgraduate entrance examination. Lu Zhu, I will take care of your university tuition and living expenses. 50,000 yuan is not a small amount of money. The whole place was silent. The biological mother looked at the red bills on the table and swallowed hard. The aunt picked up the money and touched it to see if it was real. She asked in a daze, where did you get so much money? The eldest brother shrugged, I told you a long time ago that I made money by writing novels. The eldest brother also paid living expenses to his aunt. But his aunt thought he was just pretending to be rich and paid the money he saved from working in the factory before. Auntie burst into tears. Okay, your brother and sister's education is none of your business. I'll save this money for you to buy a house and marry a wife in the future. She put all the money away, and my biological mother's eyes followed the money. Auntie walked into the inner room, and my biological mother followed her, smiling. Sister-in-law, I'm going to build a house for Xiaowei. Auntie stopped and looked at her coldly. Who is your sister-in-law? I don't have a shameless sister like you. This money is Liucai's wife's capital, and no one can take a penny from me. I guessed that my auntie had locked the money, so I pushed the door in. She was combing her hair and wiping tears. I stood at the door, wringing my hands. I'm sorry, Aunt. Although she usually has a loud voice and a bad temper, she is actually a person who cares about face. She never complains to others, let alone throws a tantrum. The behavior just now was lowering her status. Aunt turned her back and tied her hair with a rubber band. When she looked back, there were no traces of tears on her face. She scolded me fiercely, to deal with people like your aunt, you must fight poison with poison. It's useless to reason with her. I have raised you for so many years. If you are soft-hearted and help her raise her son, I will slap you to death, understand? I couldn't stop crying, I know. Why are you crying? It's a happy day. She wiped my tears with her sleeves, and her eyes turned red as she wiped them. Don't cry, our Song family will have a good life in the future. They will all be envious. She touched my hair, the college entrance examination is over, and this hair will be kept in the future. Little girls are more beautiful with long hair. Aunt locked the door twice and took me back to the table. My eldest brother has been surrounded by women. How do you make money playing computer games? How much can you make in a month? My son graduated from junior high school, can he make this much money? Lu Kai, there is a niece in my mother's family, she is 22 years old this year, graduated from junior college, very beautiful, I will introduce her to you. I also have a niece, she is 20 years old this year, she is a kindergarten teacher, very good. He is 1.75 meters tall and weighs 130 kilograms. He looks weak and helpless among a bunch of women. Women are still scrambling to promote their own girls who are far away from him. At this time, my eldest brother pushed his glasses and whispered, actually, I already have a partner. What? My aunt shouted. My eldest brother's partner is someone he met in the author group. He is an amateur author and will soon be a senior in college. My aunt was very suspicious. You are not being deceived, are you? Did she ask you to buy tea? There was a boy in our village before who bought more than 100 kilograms of tea from an online lover and spent 50,000 or 60,000 yuan. In the end, they broke up. So everyone in the village knows that you can't have a girlfriend who sells tea. No, we met via video, and I still have her photo. He took out an ID photo from his wallet. The girl was very clean, with 2 dimples and bright eyes when she smiled. The wives were full of regrets. It was as if they had missed 100 million. But not long ago, they still looked down on Big Brother, thinking that he was rotting at home and not making money. It was also a long time later that I found a word that suited Big Brother very well, social phobia. He looked cool and spoke very little. In fact, it was because he was not good at and did not like dealing with people. Most of the time he was immersed in his own two-dimensional world. During college, I accidentally learned about Big Brother's vest. He was a rural writer with quite a few fans. He wrote about rural miracle doctors, rural fortune-telling, and the like. He was quite popular, no wonder he made so much money. After the banquet, my biological mother left with a hypocritical voice. Third sister, don't misunderstand me, I still care about you. My biological father gritted his teeth. You are such a heartless person, I should have drowned you in the manure tank. I smiled slightly, it's a pity that I survived and am still alive and well. I will get better and better in the future, and this good thing has nothing to do with you. My biological father was almost angry to death. My eldest sister disagreed, Mom and Dad also have difficulties, you should also understand them. I asked her, does the policy allow having 3 children now? She sighed slightly, I have to give birth to a son, otherwise I can't explain to your brother-in-law and his parents. My 2 nieces looked at me timidly in tattered clothes. The eldest daughter is about the same age as I was back then. I asked my elder sister, when I was 4 years old, you took me into the mountains to pick up cicada shells. Later, we got separated and I didn't go back. Why didn't you come to find me? My elder sister opened her mouth slightly, did that happen? I don't remember. They gave you unforgettable pain and unforgettable fear, but they said lightly, I don't remember. But I remember. I said softly, if I stayed in the Zhang family, I might die in the mountains at the age of 4, die in a high fever at the age of 7, and die in a rainstorm at the age of 10. But I am sure that I can't stand here as a college student. Sister, don't deceive yourself. Do you really not know whether they love us daughters or not? Or maybe, as the eldest daughter, my elder sister has been loved. But as the third daughter, I really haven't been loved. When my elder sister left, her face was not very good. Although my elder brother said he could help me pay for the tuition, I still took out a loan. So he bought me a smartphone as a reward. The school is in the provincial capital, and it only takes 2 hours by bus. But my uncle and aunt insisted on sending me there. My second brother rolled his eyes. When I went to register, none of you sent me off. I went alone. My uncle slapped him on the back. You are a boy, what do you need to send? Your sister is a girl, how can she be the same as you? In fact, there was a word that suited my uncle very well. Daughter slave. He lacked patience with his 2 brothers, but he always spoke softly to me. 2 days before departure, my aunt bought some hair dye. Luju, help me dye my hair. You see, I have more white hair than black hair. The paste smelled pungent. While stirring, I whispered, no need to dye it, Aunt, you look good like this. My aunt looked in the mirror and said to herself, that's natural. When I was young, I was also a flower in the surrounding area. But I will send you to school in a few days, so you can dye your hair to avoid being compared with other parents with white hair and embarrass you. How could it be? Aunt. You are the best parent in the world. You are the most qualified mother in the world. There was still some left after dyeing, and my uncle just came back. He touched his head, don't waste it, dye it for me too. My second brother leaned against the door, rolled his eyes and said sourly, the couple even dressed up. The dormitory is for 6 people. My aunt chose a seat in the back for me. It's cold in winter near the window, and it's windy near the door. You may have to get up in the middle of the night to open the door for others. This bed is good. My uncle went to buy daily necessities for me, and my aunt made my bed. The aunt in the next bed said, your daughter looks like your father, but not like you. My aunt paused while making the bed, she is my niece, and I am her aunt, so she definitely doesn't look like you. My aunt was startled. She seemed curious why it was my uncle and aunt who sent her over, but she didn't say anything. I walked over to help my aunt hold the corner of the quilt, and spoke in a clear tone, I was raised by my uncle and my uncle and aunt are my real parents. At that moment, my aunt's hand holding the corner of the quilt shook violently. After several seconds, she nodded heavily, yes, although Luju is not my own daughter, she is my own daughter. My second brother originally wanted to take the postgraduate entrance examination, but he was hesitant considering the family situation. Now that my eldest brother gave him a reassurance, he began to prepare with all his strength. He has always been smart, and the postgraduate entrance examination was not so competitive at that time. Relatively speaking, the admission rate was higher than the college entrance examination. He successfully passed the postgraduate entrance examination at Zhejiang University. No tuition is required. He chose a good mentor, and he works on projects with him every month and receives a subsidy. In addition to supporting himself, he also had spare money to buy me birthday presents. When I was in college, my uncle, who was over 50 years old, actually learned electrician from someone else and learned the skills, and worked for a decoration company. It was not a piecemeal job, but a lump sum job. He was paid for each house he worked for. My uncle was diligent and meticulous in his work, and he could earn tens of thousands of yuan a month. My aunt followed my uncle everywhere, sometimes working as a stock clerk in a supermarket, sometimes working in a restaurant, anyway, she was never idle. The family's life was getting better and better. My uncle wanted to demolish the old house and rebuild it. My eldest and second brothers strongly suggested that he buy a house in the county town. No one will live in the house in the future. There is no room for value preservation. At that time, my uncle smoked a cigarette and said slowly, I will live with your mother. When you come back in the future, you must have a nest. No matter how good the city is, your mother and I still have our roots in the village. Nowadays, every household in the village has a building, only we still live in the old bungalow. Over the years, my uncle and aunt have been laughed at by the villagers. Building a new building may not only be about retirement, but also about face and confidence. During the winter vacation of my sophomore year, my eldest brother's girlfriend was coming to visit. In order to welcome her, my eldest brother took me to the county town to purchase. Unexpectedly, I ran into his ex-girlfriend. Counting the days, they broke up exactly 3 years ago. The ex-girlfriend was holding a child in her arms, about 1 year old. It was snowing lightly in the sky, and the two stood at the gate of the clothing city and chatted for a few words. Are you married now? Soon, my boyfriend will come to my house in a few days. Are you still working in the factory? No, I'm a freelancer now, making money at home. The ex-girlfriend was silent for a while. Then can you afford the bride price? My eldest brother smiled. My boyfriend said that her family doesn't like this. The ex-girlfriend's smile was so pale. That's good, I wish you happiness. It was too cold, and the child in her arms was making a fuss. She coaxed the child, and the eldest brother said goodbye to her. As we passed by, she whispered, Lukai, I'm sorry. When we entered the clothing store, the hot air from the air conditioner hit us in the face. My eldest brother looked depressed. I was a little unhappy. Why don't you tell her that you are making money now, and slap her in the face? It was my fault that I didn't live up to expectations at the beginning, but I can't blame her entirely. In the end, it was not fate. She didn't give her anything good during the 2 years she was dating me, and she was actually wronged. Look at her current clothes and appearance, I guess she is not living well. There is no need to hit her anymore. I think it may be because my eldest brother can empathize with others and understand others that he can write good novels. My eldest brother's love life is still quite bumpy. My eldest sister-in-law is an only child and a college student. At first, her family disagreed. Later, my eldest brother bought a house and a car in the provincial capital with a down payment. My eldest sister-in-law's cousin happened to be a website editor and knew my eldest brother's reputation. The family situation is also different from the previous years. My uncle has a craft, and the family has no foreign debt. My second brother is a graduate student, and I am also a serious college student. In the future, I will never be a burden to my eldest brother, and we can support each other. After several twists and turns, my eldest brother finally achieved success at the age of 30. Those who did not go to college in the village got married early. Many of my eldest brother's junior high school classmates have children in the 4th grade of elementary school. On the day of the wedding and tea with my mother-in-law, my aunt burst into tears. Holding my eldest sister-in-law's hand, she said, "Lukai has been sensible and well-behaved since he was a child, and he doesn't like to talk. I will leave him to you in the future, and you two just need to live a good life. You don't need to worry about me and his father." When my eldest brother was rebellious, my aunt said something, and my eldest brother said something. Or he pretended not to hear anything she said to my eldest brother. My aunt must have forgotten that she wanted to chop my eldest brother with a knife at that time. My second brother is in his 3rd year of graduate school and signed a contract with a state-owned enterprise in Shanghai. The annual salary is very good, and after working for a certain number of years, you can also help him settle down. My aunt was furious. It's so far away, how can I rely on him in the future? This son has been raised in vain. He has been naughty since he was a child and is as absent as a cat. Sure enough, he has gone to the end of the world now. My second brother picked up the phone. "Why don't I call the other party and tell them that I can't go?" My aunt snatched his phone away. "What's wrong with you? Such a good unit, so many people can't get in. I want to graduate early and work to give back to my family." But my eldest and second brothers encouraged me to take the postgraduate entrance examination. Nowadays, a bachelor's degree is not considered high. If you take the postgraduate entrance examination after graduation, it will not be so easy. Mom and Dad have us, why should you, a girl, worry about it? Aunt snorted. "You go to the exam first, but you may not pass." I asked, "What if you pass?" "If you pass, go to school. There is no tuition for postgraduate study. Your uncle and I are in good health. We can take care of ourselves." My biological mother groaned. "You still need to study for a master's degree? You will be 26 years old by then, right? You will be an old maid by then. Can you still get married? I think it is more appropriate to go out to work and make money as soon as possible." I rolled my eyes at her. "Whether I study or get married is none of your business." My second brother asked people around to select the professional teacher for me. I contacted her early. In the end, I got what I wanted and became her student. That's why I met Liang Cheng, my senior brother and later boyfriend. After graduating from graduate school, we stayed in the provincial capital together. In fact, there are better opportunities in other places. But I didn't want to be so far away from my uncle and aunt. After working for 2 years, marriage was on the agenda. At that time, my uncle's back was already bent, and there were only a few black hairs left in my aunt's hair. Liang Cheng knew my background. We saved 200,000 yuan together. I gave my bank card to my aunt. We agreed that the betrothal gifts would be given to you and my uncle. Here is 200,000 yuan. Later, when we were renovating our house, my aunt took out the card. I didn't touch a penny of the money in it. "You can use it first. Your uncle and I can still control ourselves now. When we can't make money in the future, we will ask you children for money." Liang Cheng's family was well off, and the wedding was scheduled at a hotel in the provincial capital. My biological mother may be old and confused. She actually came to me and said, "I am your biological mother. When the time comes, your father and I will go on stage and let our son-in-law serve us tea." I just told her to get lost. On the day of the ceremony, the MC asked me and Liang Cheng to serve tea to my uncle and aunt. Liang Cheng called out respectfully, "Dad, Mom." I also called out, "Dad, Mom, Uncle and Aunt." No, I changed my words after this. From then on, I called them Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad were in tears and nodded in response. Dad held Liang Cheng's hand. "I only have this precious sister, you have to promise me to treat her well for the rest of my life." Mom lowered her head and rummaged through the red envelope in her pocket. Her hair was newly dyed, but a circle of white could still be seen at the roots of her hair. She handed the thick red envelope to Liang Cheng. "When Luzhu was young, I don't know how much she suffered. Since you married her, you can't let her suffer anymore, understand?" With tears in my eyes, I kowtowed to the two of them with Liang Cheng to thank them for their upbringing. There is the grace of birth and the grace of raising. For me, the grace of raising is far greater than the grace of birth. When I was a child, I often had nightmares. I dreamed that I was in that dense forest, surrounded by countless cicada shells, and I couldn't escape no matter what. Later, the nightmare gradually left me. When did it start? Perhaps, it was when my uncle brought me snacks for the 100th time. Perhaps, it was when my aunt scolded me countless times but still kept hot meals for me. It was their love, the love of my brothers. It allowed me to walk out of the dense forest of 4 years old and have an infinitely broad sky.